And welcome back into another edition of Dolan's Dugout with your host, Steve Dolan. I'm Ramon Scott. And two guests this week, Steve. We're going to try to talk sports, but we're going to try to talk about being employed in the sports industry during the COVID era.
Or unemployed in the sports industry.
Yeah, no kidding.
Four sports guys with a lot of time on their hands. So try to entertain ourselves on a Monday night, Steve.
Yeah, definitely, Ramon. Of course, tonight we have with us, as always, we have Adam Paul from EC Preps, and also we have Mark Gleason. Mark's a camera operator with Fox Sports San Diego, among other things. First of all, Mark, thanks so much for being with us tonight.
It's a pleasure, Steve. I was just out in the garage. You know, I have a lot of time. So out in the garage, I came across a CD that I had burned of my first visit to Dolan's Dugout, 2011.
Whoa. Okay.
2011. My first visit to Dolan's Dugout. So it's nice to be invited back.
Well, Mark, it's great to have you. As you know, I mean, you're Fox Sports San Diego. I know you do ESPN. You do Turner Broadcasting during the baseball playoffs. You've done ESPN, the World Series and all. But I think I'm just scratching the surface. What am I missing?
It's one of those weird things where I'm a freelancer, but I'm an employee. I get paid, taxes are taken out and everything else, but I can pick and choose what I want to work. And they call me, and sometimes I call them. Luckily, I'm at the point in my career, most of the time they're calling me. So that's good. But still, I let them know what my availability is. Like, I'll go through the ESPN baseball season. I do all the Padre games. And I also work for ESPN doing some of their Mondays and Wednesdays and Sundays. And at the beginning of the season, I always send them my availability for the season because it gives the people who do the hiring, it takes one step out of it. They can look down the schedule and say, we need a camera. Hey, Mark Gleason's available. So, it's I cover all sports. My favorite one is baseball because I played it and I coached it, and it enables me to kind of stay one step ahead of everything. And I would say my second favorite is hockey because it's challenging more than anything else.
Yeah.
And I also do basketball and I do football also. So
they don't put that little they don't put that little thing like Fox tried several years ago, Mark, where you could follow. It's easier to follow the puck for you.
Yeah, well, it wasn't really because you didn't see that in the viewfinder of your camera. You didn't see the streak in there. You still had to follow it just as you ever did. But the viewer saw the puck when it was behind the boards even, but the camera operator didn't see it. But that was interesting technology, and people kind of panned it at the time. But to the viewer, people have always said, well, hockey's kind of a hard game to watch on television because it's hard to follow the puck. And that kind of took care of that. So
I always yell at the screen, Steve, during football season. I said, why doesn't the runner just run to the yellow line every time?
Yeah. Shouldn't they see it? No, hey, it's funny. Ramon, I know with Mark here, being a camera operator and all, Mark, one thing I know I've asked you before, but I wanted to ask you again. Let's say there's a 7 o'clock Padre game. I imagine you don't show up at 6:30. What? Tell us what your day's like.
No, the statistician shows up at 6:30.
No, they would like me to show up as few hours as possible. The fewer hours, the less the day.
If it's the first day of a series, we're there typically 6 hours ahead of time to set up our equipment. All the equipment is stored on a production truck, and it's literally in pieces. The lens is in one box, the camera body's in another box, the tripod is separate. The we call it a pan head is what the camera is mounted on. Those are all in separate boxes. Those are in pieces. We take them out of the truck and go to our camera positions and build them. But in the larger shows, they may have a setup day the day before. When we used to have an NFL team here, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Well, I used to work those games, and we would typically have a setup day on Saturday to build all our cameras and the infrastructure, even though it was, 6, 7, 8 cameras. They don't want to bring, since the game starts at 1 o'clock, they don't want to bring us in at 7 o'clock. Plus it's a network show, and you want to make sure the game gets on the network. So they would probably have us there at 4 or 5 in the morning. And that's just, and have you shoot the game also. So typically there's a setup day on some of the larger shows. But then after we set up, in the second game of the series, we have a 4-hour call, which means for a 7 o'clock game, we'd be in at 3 o'clock. We check and make sure everything still works. and then the camera guy gets a couple hour lunch. So that's the way it is.
It was always interesting because I worked for Elite. So when we had the Chargers, I actually did a lot of the overnights watching the production trucks.
Well, thank you very much.
Out in the parking lot. So that was always interesting, like when CBS would come in and Fox and all that, for the big games. And like you said, you guys would come in super early in the morning because like I said, I did the overnights and I always greeted everybody, sitting out there pretty much all by myself in the parking lot out there at Qualcomm and just watching you guys, take things out, set up. I always thought that was really interesting.
It's like the ants, that we all have their departments. There's the camera department, there's the audio department, and everybody kind of stays within their own. There are some guys that are called utilities who run the cables, who run the cables for everybody. They run the audio cables to the field and any extended camera cables, like for the cart camera that goes up and down the sideline. The utilities take care of all that. The camera guys are mainly, their responsibility is to build the cameras. And also typically one person is designated to build the booth, to put the booth together with the monitors. And in an NFL situation, there's a huge number of monitors that are in front of the announcers, because they have a telestrator and they have a stats monitor, and they have typically a lot of the analysts want to always see the high end zone view on one monitor. So typically you've got anywhere from 5 to 10 monitors in front of for a football game, and typically in a baseball game, just a couple. Just 2 or 3 monitors. So that's another job for somebody to do, is to build the booth. And a lot of times it's one of the camera operators who does it.
Well, now, Mark, for the Padres, of course, you said you're normally out on the camera in left field. What exactly do you shoot from out in left field? And does somebody tell you what to shoot? How does that all work?
There are 3 voices I hear. There's 3 voices I hear. I hear the announcers, and we react to what the announcers are saying. Plus, we listen to the director. The director can direct me to any shot he wants. But when you get into a situation like with the Padres, we kind of have a formula, and we kind of know where to go next and where to be. And the director, when you work with a director, you're one step ahead of him. You know what shot he wants next. Like, from my angle in left field, if there's a left-handed batter up, I know that the director might want a shot of the left-handed batter in between every pitch. So between every pitch, no matter what I did during the pitch, I would immediately go to the left-handed batter, and he'd go, ready 9, take 9. So that's the synergy you get when you work in a situation like baseball, where you're working with the same director all the time. And I've kind of got this reputation that I know the players also. And if they're talking about a player, the director has learned to look up at my monitor. Oh, there he is. Ready 9, take 9. Gleason's got him. But so during baseball, to me, baseball is the most difficult sport, because when the ball's hit, everybody has an assignment when the ball is hit. Typically in a football situation, you have the regular game camera, but every other camera has a responsibility, but it really doesn't change during the play. Your responsibility is the wide receiver, and you follow the wide receiver. You don't react to what happened with the ball. Whereas in baseball, you react differently. Is it a fly ball? Is it a ground ball? Is it a strikeout? Is it a walk? Depending upon the result, you also change what your assignment is, your duty is during that play. So to me, there's a lot of thinking that goes on, but there's also, you really can't think. You have to kind of react to it. It's like playing the game, If you think, you're only hurting the team. So but the thinking kind of goes on, and I try to anticipate even kind of what's going to happen during the play. And that helps me to be a better shooter also.
Now, Mark, I know I've also seen you, like, before the games when the Padres are playing. Hopefully they'll play this season. Like a Padre game will be at 7 o'clock. Padre game at 6:30. They do Padres Live. A lot of times you're up in the booth with the announcers, with Mark Grant and Don Orsillo. What is that like, and what's going on there specifically when you're doing that?
A lot of time it's a pregame show, and they have a couple of shots during the pregame show, and usually it's the high home camera operator that runs that camera in the booth. but it's just another duty within your job. If you're running that particular camera, is to do some shots with them. And I mean, you've been around those guys. They're fun to be around. Let me put it that way. And they're having a good time, and they include you in on the fun also. So I'm the thing I miss most right now is my job, because, and people tell me this over and over again, how lucky I am to have the job that I have, and I don't have it. That's the most frustrating part. Is I was everybody was looking forward to the Padres this year. Pinstripes, look at brown pinstripes. Everybody was looking forward to that this year, and here we wait. It's just and my job's not so. It's like a double whammy to me that I enjoy it so much. I enjoy every day I go to work, and I'm not making money now either. But it's also the enjoyment part isn't there. It's
yeah. And Adam, maybe it's time for you and I to kind of put these guys on the spot a little bit. I mean, they're not going to say anything to get in trouble, but this is kind of a timely broadcast, I think, given some of the a story basically that we saw from Bryce Miller just this past week. Adam, frustrated TV partners wonder if the Padres will step up. Sinclair, we've talked about it with Steve. We've talked about it with you as well, Adam, how AB5 was going to affect things and how AB5 would affect, sports this year. But these guys are, basically freelancers, and maybe instead of making Steve ask Mark the questions, because these guys both are part of going to be working for Sinclair, why don't you and I ask them a few questions, see if we can have them kind of tippy-toe around this situation, but give us some answers as to the predicament that they're in.
Well, what you mentioned earlier, Mark, kind of intrigued me. You said you weren't an employee, but you are an employee. You're a freelancer, but you are an employee. How does that work? If you don't mind me asking, without getting in trouble.
I can take any job. I can take any job I want. Any job that's offered to me, I can take any job that I want, or turn down any job I want. Okay. They can't tell me that, they can't tell me, okay, here's your work schedule. I have total freedom as far as.
Well, maybe it was that lag. I don't know if that's on our end. He might have got that lag. I did see some lag in his picture, and we'll get him back on there.
Okay. I could kind of add to what he's saying before. Again, what Mark's saying is exactly right. Is that like with he and I or any of us who are sports freelancers, we do get to. I was just telling him, hey, Rob, just tell him a little bit about what you were saying. But Mark, you know what? Since you're our special guest tonight, I love them. Since grilling you tonight, I think it's a night to grill you, and I'll just sit here and enjoy.
Well, what I mean by saying I'm an employee, but I'm not an employee, I'm a freelancer. I can take any job I want. The Padres send me the entire schedule at the beginning of the year. If I want to work 40 games out of the 81, that's my prerogative as a freelancer. They don't tell me when to work. I let them know when I want to work. But by saying that I'm an employee, I'm paid like an employee. Taxes are taken out. We have a union contract with through the IATSE union. So benefits are taken. They pay benefits for us as well as salary, and taxes are taken out. So we're paid like employees, but we're freelancers because we can pick and choose which days we want to work.
So from what you're saying, since you are a part of the union, AB5 wouldn't really affect your position.
Didn't affect us at all. We were kind of lumped into the AB5 conversation because our job appears to be that way. But the AB5, I think the AB5 kind of came from, I got the impression it came from Uber drivers or something like that, where they weren't covered by liability insurance or whatever. It was more geared towards them to try and get them benefits in some way and be treated like employees because they were employees. Now, something happened with ESPN a couple of years ago where I used to be paid by ESPN 1099.
Oh, okay.
So that was a whole different thing. then ESPN kind of got into trouble because the government came and said, wait a minute. This guy, not me personally, but some guy, this guy works for you 250 days a year. He's not just 1099 guy. This guy's an employee. Mm-hmm. You should be taking the taxes out, because ESPN didn't have to take the taxes out. So that kind of get them where now they're union as well. Plus they do now have employees that they control. They say that you are hired for 125 dates during the year and you have to work those dates. That's how they're an employee with ESPN. So if you're with ESPN and you're one of their salaried, one of their employers, you're not salary, you're hourly, but you punch the time clock and everything else, but now you're an employee because they kind of tell you when you're going to work, whereas we are paid like the employees, but we're still freelancers in that way. So the AB5 really didn't pertain to us at all.
And that's where the situation has become a bit muddled over the last couple of weeks, because Major League Baseball teams have committed to upwards of $1 million and $200,000 of that going to third-party contractors. But Adam, these two gentlemen, since they are freelancers, their money's not covered in that. So I hope Uncle Donnie's money gets here to our account soon.
Have you been covered, Adam?
Yeah, I wish. I mean, no.
I heard Elite got like $200,000 or something like that.
Yeah, but I don't normally work the Padre games.
Okay.
So just because it doesn't fit into my schedule.
Yeah.
But yeah, they did get a couple $100,000 from Major League Baseball or whoever it was that was divvying out that money. I was reading that article, and no, this whole AB5 thing it's been really intriguing to me, because I have a lot of friends, like you guys, obviously in your industry, and I have friends that are musicians. Like you said, it was supposed to, for Uber and Lyft and things like that. Well, it's the law of unintended consequences, unfortunately. Yep. And it's like we've said the last couple of shows, if coronavirus doesn't kill the jobs, the AB5 kills the other jobs.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if I could speak on that, Adam, I know a lot of people, like, for instance, the Union Tribune, with some of their freelancers in sports, and basically I've heard this secondhand, probably speaking out of turn, but once they reach their 35 stories, then they're going to talk with management about, okay, what do we do now? We're going to have to make you employees. I mean, like, for instance, in the newspaper business, like the one that carries your newspaper every day, they're not employees, and the problem is if they make them all employees, newspapers are gone. They just won't be able to afford it.
You saw what happened to the Cleveland Plain Dealer this week. I think they're down to 4 reporters.
Yeah. No, Steve, that is true. I was told that information as well. When I asked a couple of our mutual friends that work for the Union Tribune.
Yeah, and I mean, luckily, like Mark said, at least it's not that way, right now with us. And I wanted to talk to Mark too, if we could, Mark, on another subject. What's going on now with the baseball? Now, as you know, nothing going on, but there's been 2 proposals if and when they get back. One would be everybody plays in Arizona. The other would be everybody goes back to spring training, Cactus League, Grapefruit League, wherever. And the Padres would be in a 5-team division with them in Milwaukee. And, Seattle would also be in their division. I mean, it'd be a pretty
Northwest division.
Yeah, Northwest division.
Yeah. It's like the old National League West, right?
Yeah.
Atlanta, Cincinnati.
And, Texas would be in there too. But Mark, what is your thoughts on what do you have any take on if and when this will start? Will it be all in Arizona? Will it be Arizona and Florida? Because I'm sure there's not going to be any fans there. What's your take on that?
I think the Arizona one is it makes it twice as big to manage with 30 teams as opposed to 15 teams. And the other issue you have is, you've got 30 teams, but you've only got 10 facilities over there. Yeah. So where is everybody going to do spring training? And where is everybody going to, there's no way to get everybody, because they're going to need 2 or 3 weeks. of some kind of spring training to kind of get back up to speed. And you just don't have enough facilities over there unless you're going 24 hours, not 24 hours, but from early morning until late at night, dividing up these. So I think the concept of all 30 teams in one place was the concept of we'll create this big bubble over everybody and we can control them easier. But practically, I think you need to look at 15 and 15, go Florida and Arizona, and do it that way, because then everybody has their own spring training facilities. It's like they're back in spring training again, and it would be an easier thing. I like the way they divided up the teams in these divisions, because if you look at the Cactus League ones, it's the areas of Phoenix. There's the north. There's the teams that are in the Northwest. There's the teams that are in the West, and then there's the teams that are in the Northeast part of Phoenix. And then they did the same thing in Florida, where they did the teams that are on the West Coast, and they did the teams that are kind of in the north part of the state and in the south part. Now, the thing that they didn't address right away was you have 15 teams. Does that mean somebody gets a day off every day?
They'd have to, wouldn't they?
Well, somebody said one team's going to play a doubleheader every day.
Oh, okay. So you might play a doubleheader. You might play Ramon's team first game and then Adam's team the second game, theoretically.
Yes. And that's the only way they can do it, with an odd number of teams. But you won't be able to do series, because you're going to have to do it like spring training, where you have a different opponent every day. You can't do a 3-game series, because what's this one odd team, the 15th team, what are they going to do? They're not going to be able to play a series. They're going to be bouncing around from one to another to another to another. Maybe you can do a 2-game series, but you'll be traveling every day. And these are kind of things that look good in the laboratory, but practically, do they really work or not? And my hope is that they would do it just because I want the work.
Yeah, I'm with you.
The story came out today. ESPN, there was a story from the Seton Hall's University Stillman School of Business that was asking fans if they wanted to go to games. And it was overwhelming. It says 72% of Americans would not attend sporting events once they resume unless there's a vaccine. So even when we get to the point, it's spectator sports, but I don't know. It's going to be a while before there's spectators.
Yeah, Adam, I thought, I tweeted something this week. You reacted to it. I don't know. It's almost a sinister thought in a way, but sports leagues might privately be in a race to get their product in front of these eyeballs that are just camping out at home right now.
I'll tell you right now. Yeah.
It's a fine line right there. In a way, we kind of need it. But again, you're fighting this. Hey, there's been a lot of positivity of COVID news this week. Let's just see how things kind of ramp up over the next, especially as we approach May 1st, maybe May 15th. See where we stand from there, Adam.
Yeah, and you're talking about getting in front of the camera as well. Today, the governor of Florida. This goes back to our other favorite sport, Steve.
Wrestling.
Pro wrestling. He deemed it.
Wrestling's essential.
Yeah, he deemed it an essential business. And so that's going to be really interesting. And the article on ESPN.com right now is that they will be the model for going forward on how these sports will play things out.
Yeah, Mark, you can appreciate this. On I think it was on Saturday morning, Friday night, real late. It was about 1:30 in the morning, and they were getting ready to play the first game of the season over in the Chinese Professional Baseball League in Taiwan. And I'm like, you know what? This is kind of, in a way, a little bit of a historic game. I'm gonna stay up late. We're all in COVID mode anyway. So 2 in the morning, the game was gonna start. And so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna watch this. I want to see a baseball game. They've played some basketball game over in Taiwan, but the quality of baseball is a lot better than the quality of basketball. This is a good professional baseball game that was going to be played between Rakuten and the brothers. And so I got ready. I got some snacks. I'm ready for the go. 2:00 comes on. Game was rained out.
Oh no!
That's funny.
But you can see the interest. I'm a pretty big fan, maybe a little over the top, but the race is going to be back on. People are going to want that. Those first games back are going to be big time viewership. That's for sure. And in accordance to what you said and what Adam was saying, and we've talked about it here on this show, pro sports might be kind of the last thing to get fans back, because yes, I think they're probably going to start, but people are going to have that hesitation to get with big crowds. And I kind of hinted with my buddies over here that, once we get into the school year, it might be that prep sports or events with smaller size crowds might be the first thing to kind of roll into. We're kind of seeing that right now with the quote unquote rollout of the startup of the economy, which groups are going to start, which regions are going to start. As it's looking, it's going to be kind of a regional thing and maybe a city by city thing, especially if there's COVID flare-ups. You may see advisories come out of certain counties that say, hey, this county is going to be having an alert, if you will, or these counties might have to shelter in place if a COVID flare-up starts. Society might ramp up and we might start to begin to get back into the flow of things, but this is still a live situation. So we might see some metropolitan areas that could have a problem, say, that area of the country is under stay-at-home orders now after it was released or after it was withdrawn. So I think that's what we're looking at. And we talk about getting these teams together in those certain areas. One thing was interesting. They said, in the baseball in Arizona, the games are only the maximum they could travel is 50 miles. But over in Florida, if they were to get those two regions playing, they travel over 200 miles.
Yeah.
Good point, Ramon, because Don Orsillo, the Padres announcer, he was with the Red Sox for years and years. He was talking with me about that one time about spring training, about how, again, in Phoenix, everything's close, but not so much in Florida. And one thing I wanted to ask Mark, too, without, again, getting too much into the coronavirus thing, okay, let's say they go to Arizona and they start up and one member of the Kansas City Royals has a coronavirus. Now the whole Royals team is on quarantine for 2 weeks. That's an issue you're really going to watch out for, isn't it, Mark?
I think you're going to have there'll be ground rules. If one person comes down, do you need to quarantine everybody for 2 weeks?
Just like everything else, Mark, testing.
there's going to be testing but I think there's going to be strict ground rules that have to be followed for something like that to happen, which is another layer preventing it from happening. Once again, looks good in the lab, but in the practical sense of it, is it actually going to work? I was just thinking, okay, as a camera operator, let's say they call me up and they say, okay, we're going to play for 3 months over here. But if you come over, you can work, but you can't leave. You're on the bus back and forth every day, and that's all you do. You just go back to the hotel. I can't stop by and pick up a burger or anything like that.
That's going to kill you too.
Yeah. Plus, I'm away from my family for 3 months also. And the players are that way too. That seems to be one of the concerns that's kind of growing out of this. I know Zach Wheeler came out yesterday and said, well, wait a minute. My wife's going to give birth in 2 months. I'm going to be there.
Yeah.
And here's this guy. Yeah. You can't, once you leave, then you expose yourself to the outside world. And you got to be quarantined for 2 weeks to come back. It's almost like you're on the DL. It's as cool as it is to kind of logistically make believe it's going to happen. Realistically, it's just I think they're throwing these ideas out there and seeing how the feeling is, and I'm sure they're in conversation with the Players Association and seeing how they feel about it, and But I think, Ramon, your point is well taken about high school sports could be the petri dish, so to speak. Smaller crowds. Okay, when it comes down to the fall and it's time for football, is it really too big of a crowd to have a crowd at a football game? You have 5, 6, 7,000 people, if that, at a football game. Is that a safer thing as opposed to 40,000 at a Padre game or something like that? Is that actually a safer environment so that can come back before anything else? I just think if they go forward and decide to do this Arizona and Florida thing or either one, and they're talking about how sterile it'll be. Pipe in some crowd noise. You know, at least make it sound like
in fact,
make it sound like a game. You know.
You know what, Mark? I'll give you a good example of that. It's interesting. I mean, because like Adam says, he and I do watch wrestling. There's a association on Wednesday nights called AEW, All Elite Wrestling, and what they've done the last couple of weeks. Again, no crowds there, but while their matches are going on, there'll be like 10 other wrestlers around the ring yelling and screaming. So at least it gives them an atmosphere, as opposed to like the WWE will do a match. It's like in a vacuum. So somehow, some way, like you say, pump in noise. I mean, because again, it would be a sterile atmosphere. I mean, one thing, Mark, I know, like, for instance, I mentioned on the show here a couple of weeks ago, too, in 2015, they had the game in Baltimore when there were no fans there, when the riots were going on.
Yeah. One
teachers told Tim Kirchen, he said, you know, I was on the field and I could hear every announcement you guys make in the press box. So they said, Mark Gleason up in the pen for the Padres, and Adam Paul's on deck for the Dodgers, and Ramon Scott's up in the bullpen now too. And they could hear, the players could hear everything being said in the press box. So very,
you know, when this all started and they were talking about the games without the fans, I'm like, well, shoot, I've worked games without fans. No, seriously, I worked at Gross.
That's usually the Twitter response is, oh, why didn't you go to an Orioles game or whatever?
I worked at Grossmont College for almost 20 years as an event manager in the event management for the athletic department. And when we would have the men's basketball tournament, there'd be no fans.
Yeah, of course, the difference being the pros are worse than the fans. If I could, it was funny. I heard on CBS Sports Radio the other day, a lady had a really good comment when we're talking about teams going back with no fans. When you're talking about teams going back with no fans in the stands, isn't there a Charger joke in there somewhere?
Yeah.
You know? I mean, really?
Somebody said today that they were asking the Chargers and a couple of Florida teams about playing in front of empty stadiums, and it was just, you want to tee it up. You know, right away. Well, but at least if they're pumping in fan noise, you won't hear the visiting fans. So I don't know.
Yeah, the Chargers already were doing. Yeah.
And don't think that they aren't that Manfred and those guys aren't watching that situation closely in Taiwan, because we can criticize China all we want for their underreporting, but if they're actually getting out there just off the island there and getting back to some baseball now, and you figure maybe we're really only 2 weeks to a month behind that curve, if you will, maybe a little longer, but still they're willing to go forward with starting their season. So, and they're doing the same thing. Now I want to just show you, I know you'll get a kick out of this. You guys are talking about, how about this, you guys? This is what they had over there. They had fake fans there with.
I saw that today. I saw that. That's cute.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, Chargers might think of doing that. Yeah.
No, the visiting teams buy up all the seats. So
I think you could see them kind of watching the first couple of weeks of that and see if they can play the season without any of their players reporting any infections. Look, like I said, you could kind of criticize what's happened in China, but that's a lot closer to a real hot spot than, Arizona and Florida. So if they can get a couple of weeks of play in without incident, I think it'll boost the confidence of the sports leagues over here to try to do something. They've talked about NBA doing something in Vegas. Hockey, they've been a little bit more gun shy right now. They are kind of leaning towards shutting things down. So
did you hear the weird proposal came up today that they identified three places? It was, I think, Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, and Minot, North Dakota, and New Hampshire, Manchester, New Hampshire, were three places that they could stage the playoffs, because there was a very low incidence of the COVID-19 in those locations. So,
Mark, I've been to Minot, North Dakota, because my wife's side of the family's from there, so I know what they're saying. It's interesting, too, because one thing people, like, I know, for instance, I love Coach Quintera's show on radio. The other day you had you still got ignorant people out there about what's going on. One guy said, open up Petco Park and all the security cats could sit one to every 3 seats, which was stupid to say, but he said the rest of us could sit together. But when you think about it, where the biggest place that it's happening with COVID-19 is New York. Why? everybody's scrunched together. Now, why did Wyoming just become the last place where it became an issue? You ever been to Wyoming? It's spread out. So
they practice social distancing all the time there.
Yeah, exactly. That's why it's working. That's why people who question social distancing, well, why is it happening so much in New York? Because they're squished together. Yeah. Why ain't it happening in Montana, North Dakota, Wyoming, etc.? They ain't squished together, but I think it would be interesting because if they have it in mind. I think they've also talked about Grand Forks, where the University of North Dakota is. And it's funny, if you've been there, Grand Forks, there's actually two Grand Forks. There's a North Dakota and a Minnesota. I mean, it's right there on the line.
That's grand.
Yeah, I've been there, and it's just amazing. I mean, I'll give you a quick North Dakota story since we're on that topic. I remember when we were back there several years ago in a small town called Mayville, where my mother-in-law is from. I was actually walking down the street, and how much do they know your business? I'm walking down the street, and some guy got up to me and says, "Hey, aren't you that visitor in from Southern California?" That's how small town it is. They know you. If you're not one of the 12 who's already there, it's like, there's that Mark Gleason guy. Isn't he that guy from Fox Sports?
You're in visiting, aren't you?
Yeah. But that's the way it is. I can understand going to places like that, because to say nobody's there is pretty accurate.
Yeah. But I go from optimistic to pessimistic every day.
Oh,
I can see a scenario where there are no spectator sports until the end of the year.
Sure.
And then I get a little optimistic. I say, well, yeah, maybe they'll be playing June 1st or July 1st, or, maybe things will be all right. But every day, different stories and just different feelings in reaction to, what is the reality of it all. And we just don't know. When we get on the other side of this, looking back, it's going to be a head shaker, because how fast it happened. I worked an ESPN game in Phoenix on the 3rd. It was that game with the mic'd up players. That really fun game. Yeah, that was fun. So I worked that game, and I'm thinking about, okay, and then I worked the last Ducks game on the 11th in Anaheim, and that night is when the NBA came out and said, well, we're closing down. And then because they share so many arenas, you knew the NHL was right behind them. But I was all excited. Like I'm saying, everybody was excited about the Padres season. I was going over the next weekend to work another game, not a Padre game, but to work a game. Then my son and I were going to drive over and watch some games. And then I was going to go over and work again. And I had a couple other games. And, it was just kind of like, and now it's Groundhog Day.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, like Ramon's saying, the COVID-19 schedule. Yeah, I go to bed about 2 o'clock in the morning every night, and I get up about 9 or 10, and tomorrow I'll do the same thing again. Then
want to take a nap after lunch? No problem.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah.
Mark, you had a great answer when I called you a couple weeks ago on the phone. I said, Mark, have you got a minute? And you said, I've got all day. But don't we all?
When do you want? Let me see. It's like you called me. You texted me today about doing this. Are you still?
Yeah.
Tonight? Yeah. I don't have to check my schedule. Yeah, I'm okay.
Well, Adam, it looks like I've failed in my job to be the investigative journalist here, as we try to get these guys to make some comment on Sinclair's position as it relates to paying these guys. But maybe Adam and I could just talk about it for a second. Adam,
do you want a little bit?
I think that's a great question. Mark,
there's a couple of layers to it. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, first of all, the games haven't been canceled yet.
Right.
So, and we don't know what their thought process is. They've just hired this PR guy now that I hear is not well thought of. So they've hired this PR guy now as the front man, who is known to be a buzzsaw kind of guy. Yeah. And a thing came out today. There's a Facebook page about unemployed sports camera production people. So anyway, a couple of layers to it is the games haven't been canceled yet. So they could be saying the games aren't canceled. They might still be played. We're not going to pay you twice. They could be saying that. But I had 3 games for Sinclair outlets in spring training that I was supposed to work that got canceled that I didn't get paid for. So to me, that says, okay, they didn't pay me for those. Are they going to pay me when these games are canceled? But they've come forth with this $2,500 loan, interest free, but you have to pay it back $250 each time you work,
Borrow from yourself.
half of your salary. So now you're coming back and you're making half of what you were making to pay off this loan. And it's kind of like the other entities are different, though, because, and as I said, there's 21 regional sports networks that Sinclair owns. Somebody estimated if there were no events for the rest of the year, it would cost them $250 million. Okay. Yeah. But on the other side, they're still collecting subscriber fees. They're still running advertisements if they're running an old Padre game, but they're not paying the crew that worked it the first time there would be a game on that night. They're saving money having to pay the crew, and yet they still have income coming in. So there's two sides to look at this, and I don't want to slam one or the other. I want to kind of be, not down the middle, but kind of say, well, the games haven't been canceled. When they get canceled, let's see what they do.
Yeah, but surely, Adam, we're not looking at a 162-game season, especially if it takes at least 4 to 6 more weeks to even get back on the field.
No, definitely not. Even if you guys work 100 games or 88 games or whatever they've proposed. I mean, I just hope it all gets worked out. Well, heck, even if let's say they move all those games to Florida and Arizona, that doesn't do people like workers like me any good.
Nope.
Or people like my other friends who work for the Padres any good.
No.
And hey, can I make a point?
It gets the games played, but it doesn't take care of that problem. There's still going to be people in each market hurting because they're not working at the game. So you might as well wait until you can play those games. What's more important, to play the games in where you're supposed to play them or just to play the games? Mm-hmm. And that determination, I'm sure, is discussed daily amongst Major League Baseball, the Players Association. How important is it that we play somehow, some way? Because when are they going to be able to have fans in the stands in New York City?
Oh, yeah. Well, I said it last week to these guys. Who would want to sit right now in the Meadowlands and watch anything,
Exactly. How long is it going to be before they're able to have it? There'll be other parts of the country that'll be fine. Somehow it'll be reasonably safe to go to a game. But those places, New York City especially, are the Yankees going to play every game in front of an empty stadium? Are the Yankees going to play every game on the road? And the Mets, what are they going to do? And then when it comes to football time, I don't know. It's going to be a couple months down the road. And like I say, when we look back on this, we're still going to be shaking our heads.
You know what, Mark? I want to go back at a point earlier, if I could, when we were talking about the whole pay thing with Sinclair and all. As you know, on this show before, we've talked about the San Diego Seals before on the show, the lacrosse team owned by Joe Tsai. And one thing is, Bleacher Report, Joe Tsai, they are paying those of us on the crew for the games missed. So kudos to the National Lacrosse League.
Absolutely. And I don't know if it's throughout the league or not, but the Seals paid the employees of the arena as well as the broadcast crew. We're not part of that. And they paid us anyway. To me, that says a lot about the organization as a whole. And granted that the Padres, it's more games, okay, but they're not even talking about paying us. And yet the Seals did. And, it's a totally unique situation. I know the Braves came out today and said that they're going to be paying their employees through May 31st, but the broadcast people aren't part of that. And the other layer to that is this Sinclair loan was not for everybody. It was for, you had to work 60% of the events in order to qualify for this loan. So there are guys who didn't work that as many games, who maybe had some other thing that they were working on and weren't able to work 60% of the games, or even weren't offered the 60% of the games. They weren't offered the $2,500 loan. So there's something to that also, that, well, you do it to everybody or you don't do it, Are they afraid they're not going to get paid back because these people didn't work 60% of the games. But I don't think that point has been made enough, that not everybody was offered this loan. And the way that the TV crews are handled now, we're hired by Fox Sports San Diego. And the visiting team, there are camera operators also, and audio operators, tape operators, statisticians who are hired for the visiting team. Those guys aren't benefiting from this at all.
No, I know. I've been on that end. I've been on that end where I've done the visiting team.
Visiting team, they're not being taken care of at all. And it's the same guys. There are guys who work on the Padres telecast and also sometimes work on the visiting telecast. They bounce back and forth. I was one of those guys once. And the visiting crews are not being taken care of, which I think is another issue when we're talking about this whole thing, being paid for games that we're not working right now. Not everybody's in the same boat. And I think that's an issue as well that not a lot of people have brought up.
Hey, Mark, I got a quick question regarding the way you phrase that. When it comes to splitting the crew or splitting the responsibilities of camera operators, graphics people, statisticians, producers, directors, is there any difference between when a team comes in that is a Fox Sports affiliate comparatively to if they're an affiliate from say Root Sports or another organization? Are those tied in at all? Like, if St. Louis comes in and the Fox Sports Midwest, say they come into town, would they share more responsibilities to lighten the load on workers rather than a team that isn't a Fox Sports affiliate and has their contract somewhere else?
It's not really sharing the load to lighten the load. They're hiring fewer people.
They do that.
Fewer camera operators. If it's a Fox entity, because we are a Fox market, there's a thing now that they call dual broadcasts. So typically a visiting team comes in, and the Padres, we have like 7 or 8 cameras. The visiting feed has 3 to cover the game and follow their storylines. That's all. But those guys are paid by Fox as well. But when the Dodgers come in,
good point.
Their spectrum, they bring an entire crew.
Yes.
They have their own cameras. We don't share cameras maybe share 1 or 2 cameras. Like they might get a feed from my camera in left field because it's a different angle, but the main game cameras, they have their own. Mm-hmm. So there are differences between when each team comes in, and it's also different in who pays you. There's a Fox who pays us. There's another crewer in town who also hires some of the crews. So there's pretty much, that's it. In this market. No, there's 3 in this market that hire. So if you have 3 teams come in, it may be 3 different crewers. You may have the Dodgers come in, it's an entire crew. And then the Cardinals come in, it's only 3 guys. And then the Rockies come in, and maybe they only have 2 camera guys, but they still have audio, and so it changes from team to team as far as the number of employees, the number of broadcast people that are working in a particular series.
And Mark, another thing along those lines. Go ahead. I'm sorry. One thing I wanted to ask real quick with Mark on that topic is also when you're shooting for Fox Sports San Diego, the games are also in Spanish. Isn't the Spanish network also using your camera feeds?
Yes, they used to have 2 cameras of their own, but now they just take whatever we give them. Okay. And I think they have 1 wide shot that they can lock off, that they can cut to when they cut to the booth and Don Orsillo and Mark Grant are talking back and forth. Well, you have Eduardo and Carlos Hernandez talking at the time, and then you see Orsillo and Grant. Well, that doesn't make any sense. So they have another camera that they can punch away to when they know that they're going to go to that camera. But they use pretty much our entire broadcast.
Now, would that be the same thing with like when the Dodgers come into town? Because I believe Fernando Valenzuela still does. So the Spanish is one of the Spanish guys for them.
I think that they do have a Deportes as well, but I think it's pretty much the same kind of situation where they take the same telecast and just add their own announcers to it.
Okay.
That's probably right. David Charles Dickens. because I guess there's clauses in the TV contracts for a situation like this where they don't have to pay all the rights fees if games aren't played. There's some kind of clause in there as far as that goes, but it is to recoup some more TV money. But, the Padres, that's the difference in baseball than the other sports. In the NFL, everybody gets the same amount of TV money. That's how you can have a team in Green Bay, Wisconsin. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a minor league town. Okay. It's Green Bay, Wisconsin, but they're just as competitive as the Dallas Cowboys, as the LA Rams, as the New York Giants, because of the structure of the broadcast dollar in football. In baseball, the Dodgers get $325 million a year from their contract. The Angels get $250 million. The Padres get 90.
Well,
So the Padres they're more dependent upon the fans, the turnstile count. And it's been estimated that, just doing the math, that the Padres make about $1.2 million a game, something like that, on a good night.
I know as a big Yankees fan, it was always the joke. They didn't have to sell tickets. They got paid over $600 million before they even sold a ticket.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah. And if I could, Adam, I actually worked a couple times. I've worked with the Yankees crew when I was doing the visiting team, and it was pretty amazing, the crew they had. I mean, normally when I do stats, it's just me and a guy on a headset. I mean, I was talking to so many different people. I got to tell you, Mark Gleason knows what I do. I was talking to more people on a Yankee telecast than ever. It was just pretty amazing how many people they had. And another thing, even on the Yankee telecast, normally, the guys in the truck are keeping their own book. Every batter, just to verify, okay, Mark Gleason just singled the left, Adam Paul doubled the left, Mark went to third, Ramon Scott just hit a 3-run homer. I had to really dictate the game, and you don't normally do that, but it was just amazing, the difference in the level of what they asked for from the Yankees. Not that it was hard to do, but again, they just asked a lot more, and they did a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
I was watching one of our telecasts the other night. It's the best. I mean, our director, Zach Jensen, just the way he cuts the game and everything, and our camera angles and the camera operators that we have, and we're all kind of really intuitive about the game. And I watched the game, and it's not cookie cutter. There's a little variety to it every time a guy hits a home run, and we have a wireless camera that can roam the stands. And I saw a shot the other night, a guy hits a home run, they cut to the wireless camera, and you see the guy coming around third base, and you see the scoreboard behind him and everything else. It wasn't just the typical shot from the camera by the first base dugout of the guy coming around third and touching home. There was this variety to it, and I watched it. I just shake my head and I go, man, I'm so proud to be a part of that, which makes me miss it even more.
Yeah, Steve, I can remember back, I must have been 1976, and Channel 6 had 12 games televised.
Yes.
And then Adam, we used to have to, remember that we had to pay to get Channel 4 Padres.
Yes.
Well, it wasn't even that. I remember, if you remember, Southwestern Cable used to have a package deal where you could buy them on pay-per-view.
Yeah, it was pay-per-view. It's like you'd buy 40 games, and if you bought them individually, it'd be
like $7 or something.
Yeah, but if you bought the package, it's only $4 a game.
Yeah. Yeah, and we've they've come a long way. My question, going back to the production aspect, do they ever outsource like their graphics and stuff? Because I'm just curious, because a mutual friend of ours, Ramon and I's, David Furker, here locally, works for a company that does a lot of the graphics for these major league sports like the NFL. He told me they do all the graphics and stuff for the AEW professional wrestling on Wednesday nights. All their social media. I mean, anything you see either on TV or on social media, he does it basically.
Some of the ESPN games now, we call them Grammys.
Okay.
And Grammys means that the graphics is back in Bristol.
Yeah. Okay.
Where the graphics used to be inside the truck. They're all done back in Bristol, and they have a couple of tape operators back there. ESPN has developed this model called a REMI, where we have camera operators at the stadium, we have audio technicians, and now we have announcers there. But there was a time where they didn't have the announcer at the stadium anywhere. But the director and the producer and all the tape operators, everything, they're back either in Bristol or Charlotte or down in Disney's Wild World of Sports down in Florida. They're in one of those places, and the only thing you have on site is the camera operators and the audio people. Okay. And there was a time where they took the announcers also and they put those guys back somewhere else. And I remember there was an announcer here, Steve Quiss.
Yeah.
Flew him back to Florida to do a game that was in San Diego.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But yeah, they've started last year the AAF. We did that model for them as well. They were all Remy's. The producer and the director were not on site. They were back in a studio in Scottsdale, along with the graphics, all the tape operators, everything. The only thing on site was some audio personnel. Even the announcers weren't there. The announcers were in Scottsdale.
Yeah, so, Mark, I'm sorry. I remember I did an American Alliance football game where the announcers were going to be, the first game I did was going to be Andrew Siciliano from the NFL Network and Coach Marvin Lewis from the Cincinnati Bengals. I thought, oh, that's going to be cool. I talked to Marvin about the Bengals and all. Well, I was in San Diego giving stats to somebody in Phoenix with the announcers in New York. It was amazing. And I know
that's technology now. That's where we're at, and it's
they were working from home.
Yeah, you could just like this. Yeah. They were practicing social distancing.
Oh yeah, I remember one time on a Remy game you're talking about. I was on headset doing stats. Again, I was at a game at University of San Diego on headset with somebody in Bristol. And they were on like a 2-second delay, so I'd actually be saying to them, okay, Mark Gleason's going to the foul line. They say, hold on, we haven't gotten there yet. They said, give us about 2 or 3 seconds after you've got something. Hold on for a couple seconds because we're not there yet. It was just very interesting how these Remy's work because, again, you're a camera operator of the game. I'm doing stats of the game. And yet, again, I'm on headset with somebody in Bristol while the announcers are down in Florida. It was just pretty amazing how those work.
Yeah, I did a game in Hawaii. There was a 4-second delay.
Oh, geez.
So we were shooting the game, and it was 4 seconds before the director saw it. The satellite and everything else. So he would call a shot in our head, and we had shot it 4 seconds ago, and he would ask for me to get something and then get impatient because, well, you're looking at something and you're 4 seconds ago, and it was crazy. And I have a couple of videos that I saved of what I call Remy. This is a Remy, and there's a camera shot, and the camera whips off, and he cuts to another camera, and that camera whips off because he's 4 seconds behind. He's calling for a shot, and as a camera operator, you're always looking for the next shot. And you sit there. Well, he's not going to use that shot. I'm going to go get another shot. Boom. Well, in the meantime, he sees the shot that you were sitting on and puts it on the air. Well, you've already whipped off that and gone to somewhere else, and it looks like a mess in the air, but all they care about is the commercials play.
Right. No, it was just so fascinating to hear David telling me how it all worked. Cause like I said, he'd be in the office on Wednesday when the AEW and Cody Rhodes, one of the main guys for AEW, would call him at whatever, saying, hey, can we use this? And he's like, you own the graphics, dude. He, especially on Saturdays, Saturdays were a lot of his big business for them. I know he's there in the early morning all the way up until however long late at night. And then on Sundays, kind of the same thing. It's just such a fascinating thing that here locally, we have one of the top companies that he works for, and it's very, very well known. And that's why I was just curious about that.
Yeah. Funny thing is, I have a buddy of mine who works back at ESPN, and he has, I have on Facebook, every game I work, I post a picture and says, here's the view from my office. Mm-hmm. And then he sends me a picture back, and he has my camera in his replay machine, he says, well, here's the view from my office, and it's my camera. So
Very cool.
he's
Very cool.
it's back in Bristol. So but that's where technology has taken us. And, that was the concern, is if they go back and play all these games in Arizona, you're going to need 15 games a day. If all 30 teams are there, 15 games a day, you need 15 television crews. Mm-hmm. Okay. Where are you going to get those guys? Or are they all going to be robotic cameras? Or, what is that? Am I getting excited about it and going to be let down, or what? Are they going to do it with 3 robotic cameras just so they get everything on the air, just to not have another human being out there? Don't know.
Yeah, that doesn't work with something like baseball. I think, I always wanted to get into television. I wanted to be in the NFL. I wanted to be the guy with the orange gloves.
Yeah, you can.
Oh yeah, the red hat. Yeah. Yeah. Hey, you know what, guys? We've been going for an hour now. I mean, like I said earlier, when I called Mark and asked him about, if he had a minute or two, and he said he had all day, and I think we've had all night. But I think we've covered a lot. I'm hoping to have Mark back again soon. But Mark, I'm hoping.
Well, let me check my schedule.
Yeah, but I tell you what, next time we have you back, I hope you have a schedule. Well, hopefully we'll say, Mark, are you working an ESPN game this Monday night, or can you be with us? And hopefully we'll soon.
I was getting ready to fly to New York City and do Sunday night baseball fly in on Saturday and have dinner with my aunt and uncle in New Jersey, and then work the game on Sunday. And then I was going to drive over to Las Vegas to the NAB convention on Monday when I flew back. And then instead I'm sitting in my room listening to music.
Yeah. Well, once again, we really do appreciate Mark Gleason, camera operator for Fox Sports San Diego, ESPN. I know. Hopefully, you'll be back with TBS during the baseball playoffs. Hopefully, there'll be such a thing this year.
Baseball playoffs.
Yeah, I think something. Like I said, something's going to happen. I mean, if they can play baseball in Taiwan right now, we'll be playing baseball here within a couple of months, I'm sure.
I hope so. And then how long are they going to make the season? Are they going to play all the way through October into November, or is the World Series going to end on Thanksgiving?
Yeah. Hey, you talk about the commissioner and everybody sitting around. All they have to do all day is make contingency plans. So that's why I think we're seeing so many ideas flying out of there, right? It's kind of like everybody just sitting around,
I did that the other night.
What sticks to the wall.
I made a fake schedule, but it was kind of a real schedule for June 2nd. I just threw it out there, and people, whoa, where'd you get this from? And it was all 30 teams playing a schedule on June 2nd, who they would have been playing that day and what site. 1 p.m. at Surprise, it's the Rangers against the Angels. And I made out the schedule, and people were, whoa, where'd you get that from? One of the things where I'm sitting around, and I was talking to my son. I said, hey, I wonder what a schedule would look like. And I went ahead and made it out and posted it, and people kind of got crazy about it.
Let's say we've all done and we'll get out of here, Steve, but let's say we all do our job. We do those 4 things that we mentioned, right? Stay at home, wash our hands, social distancing, and pray. And before you know it, those plans, Steve, I know you want to, even what Mark was saying with, hey, could this really happen? We're going to want it. We want our baseball. We want to get started. Who's to say that, because of the contingency plans, that we don't start in Arizona and Florida and then maybe move to those cities after, halfway point? They just say, hey, things are looking better. We all did our job. Less people are getting sick. We're all getting healthy and strong. Who knows? So I think there's baseball. It's baseball season.
Yeah. Full disclosure, though. I showered and shaved before I came on here for the first time in 3 days, but you don't get out of the house. Who cares?
Yeah, Mark and I were comparing our COVID haircuts.
Yeah, I went and got a haircut on the 14th, and then yeah.
Well, Mark Gleason, thanks so much for joining us on EastCountySports.com, and for everybody listening. We'll be here every Monday at 8:30. We're going to have Mark back, and like I say, Mark, hopefully next time you come back, it'll be because you decided not to do a Monday night baseball game that night.
Or I'll do it from the Monday night baseball game.
Baseball game or 3.
Yes.
Yeah.
Triple header.
You got a date. Yes.
All right. For our guests, Mark Gleason, Adam Paul, and host Steve Dolan, I'm Ramon Scott. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.